Chapter 2: The Moon and Jupiter Collide. This is Xiaoyu's plan. But there is a big flaw in this plan, and that is the problem of fuel consumption before reaching Titan. With the Earth's current technology, rockets are used to obtain power for launching spacecraft. After reaching the second cosmic speed and breaking away from the Earth's gravitational field, the spacecraft mainly relies on inertia to fly, and the fuel it carries is only used to make some orbits. Fine-tuning, as well as necessary acceleration and deceleration. Of course, Xiaoyu's spaceship is not like this. Xiaoyu's spacecraft was assembled in geosynchronous orbit, and then relied on its own fuel to escape the Earth's gravitational field and began to set off towards outer space. Although he had stored as much fuel as possible at the beginning, and Xiaoyu had optimized the fuel utilization rate to the maximum extent, 35% of the total fuel had been consumed just by breaking away from the Earth's gravitational field. After a few times of acceleration, Xiaoyu now only carries 60% of the fuel he used to carry. And the amount of fuel required to stay hidden on the backside of Mars for a long time is not a small amount. Moreover, it needs to decelerate when reaching the orbit of Mars, accelerate when leaving the gravitational field of Mars, and decelerate again when reaching Titan. These all require a lot of fuel consumption. Xiaoyu's original plan was to fly directly to Europa. Because Europa is the most likely place in the solar system besides Earth to have liquid water. There is liquid water. With the help of the special local environment and some special technical means, Xiaoyu can collect liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen as fuel, and then concentrate on studying nuclear fusion technology. When he fully masters the nuclear fusion engine technology, he can collect it from Jupiter. After enough fusion fuel, Xiaoyu left the solar system and flew into outer space. Now all the good plans have been disrupted by the collision of the Moon with Jupiter. In desperation, Xiaoyu adjusted the engine injection direction, changed the trajectory, and flew towards Mars. Nearly 10 days have passed. During this period of time, the Moon had crossed the orbit of Mars and was hurtling toward Jupiter like a crazy beast. Xiaoyu's camera is also paying close attention to the Moon. 20 days flew by. Fiery red sparks appeared in Xiaoyu's field of vision as expected. After deceleration, the speed of Xiaoyu's spacecraft has dropped to 4,000 meters per second. This deceleration consumes at least 5% of the fuel, making Xiaoyu grin in pain. However, these consumptions are necessary. If it does not slow down, the spacecraft will pass by Mars. Only when the speed is about 4 kilometers per second will it be captured by Mars and enter an orbit around Mars. Successfully entering the orbit around Mars at an altitude of 3,000 kilometers from Mars, Xiaoyu slowly rotated around Mars and began to wait quietly for the moment when the unprecedented impact came. This height is the optimal height calculated by Xiaoyu through precise calculations. At this height, the spacecraft can be completely hidden on the back of Mars to avoid the energy erupted by the impact, and energy consumption can be minimized when escaping the gravity of Mars. Xiaoyu's current spacecraft is making a circular motion similar to a circle with Mars as the center. At Xiaoyu's current speed, it would take less than 2 hours to orbit Mars. Before the Moon hit Jupiter, meteorites from the Earth had already begun to visit Mars. Recently, the density and quality of meteorite impacts on Mars have increased significantly. Looking at the flashes of light that erupted from time to time on Mars, Xiaoyu began to feel inexplicably worried. Meteorite chunks from the Earth clearly have characteristics that indicate the existence of life. For example, this meteorite, which is 300 meters long and 50 meters wide, has an albedo as high as 0.7, and it obviously has a very smooth and bright surface. Xiaoyu speculated that this might be a meteorite mainly composed of steel. Xiaoyu was so greedy that he really wanted to get this piece of steel in his pocket. After all, transforming the spacecraft in the future will require a lot of materials. But the reality obviously disappointed Xiaoyu. Not to mention such a huge meteorite, Xiaoyu didn't have the ability to collect even a small pebble. After all, at such a high speed, a small pebble meteorite is equivalent to a grenade. Now Xiaoyu can no longer withstand these unexpected blows. This is also the largest meteorite in this period. At first, the Tunguska explosion that occurred on the Earth was speculated to be caused by a meteorite about 30 meters in diameter hitting the Earth and disintegrating in the atmosphere. The energy of that explosion was equivalent to the energy intensity of more than 1,000 Hiroshima atomic bombs. The current steel meteorite is dozens of times larger in mass and volume than that one. Fortunately, Xiaoyu's spacecraft happened to be on the other side of Mars when the impact occurred. But even so, through the optical telescope, Xiaoyu also observed the huge impact of this meteorite on Mars. The huge shock wave increased the eccentricity of Mars by 0.2 percentage points. Directly behind the impact point, a mountain with a height of 10,000 meters suddenly rose. At the same time, countless dead volcanoes on Mars restarted. After the explosion, thick smoke and dust almost covered the entire surface of Mars. The permafrost ice at the poles was also melted, and there was rainfall on Mars that had never happened in 10,000 years. At the same time, several violent earthquakes almost changed the entire appearance of Mars. Xiaoyu realized a sentence on a deeper level: the entire solar system is an exquisite overall structure, and one move affects the whole body. The explosion of the Earth is not just a matter of the Earth. The explosion of the Earth is destined to affect the entire solar system, and it is a huge impact that cannot be underestimated. Looking at all this, Xiaoyu felt inexplicably sad, feeling like a rabbit dying and a fox dying. Now, even if there are living things on Mars, they will all die. In addition to flexibly dodging several debris splashed from Mars by the impact on Mars basically had no impact on Xiaoyu. If I had to say it, it would raise Xiaoyu's estimate of the impact of the moon's impact on Jupiter to another level. After thinking about it, Xiaoyu actually began to look forward to this impact. I dare not say that such a level of impact is rare in the entire Milky Way, at least in the third acre of the third cantilever, right? I actually being able to witness such a big event, my life is not in vain. Time has passed 20 days. There are still 10 days left before the estimated impact time. Xiaoyu had begun to slowly reduce his speed. Correspondingly, in order to avoid being pulled by the gravity of Mars and falling into Mars, Xiaoyu had to increase the jet power of the engine towards Mars. Finally, the day before the impact, Xiaoyu fixed the spacecraft on the back side of Mars. The current Xiaoyu is roughly in a straight line with the center of mass of Mars and the center of mass of Jupiter. This can avoid the influence from Jupiter to the greatest extent. Out of a sense of curiosity, Xiaoyu was really unwilling to miss the opportunity to witness a unique collision. Therefore, Xiaoyu placed a small satellite carried on the spacecraft in advance in orbit around Mars. In this way, even if Xiaoyu is hiding behind Mars, he can still see some images of the impact through the broadcast. Based on the current orbit, Mars is a full 500 million kilometers away from Jupiter. In other words, the images and effects of the impact would not be transmitted here until about half an hour after the impact occurred. Based on the data obtained from the last observation, Xiaoyu began to count down silently in his heart. In fact, by this time, the impact should have already occurred. It's just that the image of the impact has not traveled a long distance of 500 million kilometers. Imagining that peerless and astonishing scene, Xiaoyu's heart was full of expectations. 10, 9, 8, 2, 1. Everything was as expected. Xiaoyu saw an amazing scene. On the ecliptic plane, the light from the sun has been almost completely obscured by the debris caused by the explosion of the Earth. Therefore, the current solar system is dark. However, in the darkness, in the distant and endless sky, a huge light source suddenly appeared. Its light intensity was almost 10 times greater than that of the sun. This huge light source instantly illuminates the entire solar system. The image only appeared for a moment, and then the signal was cut off. Xiaoyu knew that the small satellite was melted by the powerful radiation from Jupiter. Before Xiaoyu could recover from the shock, he felt the huge impact of the collision between the moon and Jupiter. Powerful light sources, heat sources, and high-energy rays directly turned Mars upside down. The previous impact of steel meteorites from the Earth has covered the entire Martian atmosphere with endless dust, plunging the entire planet into darkness. The powerful energy from Jupiter attacked, and the high-energy rays directly heated the already chaotic Mars. The unbearable atmosphere and the imbalance of air pressure caused a super hurricane to blow on Mars in an instant. The wind was so strong that it almost blew some debris directly into the Mars synchronous orbit. At the same time, the surface of Mars on the side facing Jupiter began to melt, and the rocks and gravel were heated into a dark red torrent, raging on the surface of Mars. Facing the mighty power of heaven and earth, Xiaoyu did not dare to move at all. He just hid behind Mars silently and observed all this silently. Xiaoyu began to feel grateful that he had made the right decision. If he hadn't found the big shield of Mars, I might have become a puddle of molten iron by now. The high-energy rays did not stop at all. After passing the orbit of Mars in an instant, they continued to fly towards the orbit of the Earth at the speed of light. There is a large group of comets gathering in the Earth's orbit right now. Under the influence of the sun's light pressure, heat and high-energy particle flow, they all drag their long comet tails backwards. But the powerful energy from Jupiter arrived. Countless comet tails were blown away in an instant, and the sun seemed to take off its veil and became brighter at this moment. But the next moment, the energy from Jupiter temporarily overwhelmed the energy of the sun, blowing the comet tails towards the sun. Through the intensity of light reflected from Jupiter by the comet, Xiaoyu calculated the approximate brightness of Jupiter at this moment. At this moment, the absolute magnitude of Jupiter is definitely more than 10 times greater than that of the sun. In other words, if Jupiter and the sun are placed at the same distance, the brightness of Jupiter at this moment will be more than 10 times higher than that of the sun. What a majestic power this is.